Sleazy bar worker breaches data protection after taking a woman's phone number from their track and trace log and texts her. Stolen valor superintendent's misconduct hearing outcome. Is that weed I can smell? Nope, not anymore, as the IOPC rules that the smell of weed in itself is no longer enough to conduct a search. And the traffic warden gives man being treated by paramedics a parking ticket. This and more coming up. Don't forget, these reports are daily, generally, Monday to Friday. Please remember to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And if you do appreciate the work I do, please consider joining the channel Patreon for as little as just £3 per month to help me continue providing this content. Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies and in-betweeners. My name's Dan and welcome back to another PAP Reports. Today is Saturday, the 12th of September 2020, because I didn't put a video out yesterday. As soon as we heard about the track and trace procedures being implemented in bars and restaurants, I said it was a bad idea to be giving your details to anyone and that it would be very hard to ensure data protection policies are followed. Seems I was right after 32-year-old Lucy Dixon found out recently. Lucy received a text message out of the blue which said, "Hi gorgeous, hope you're well." After realising that she didn't know who the sender was, she asked who it was. After a few lies of where the sender got her number, it became apparent to Lucy that a staff member of a bar she'd recently visited had taken her number and messaged her. Lucy posted screen grabs of the messages on Facebook saying that it was a breach of general data protection regulations. As you already know, under government measures, pubs and bars have to ask customers to leave their contact details so they can be called in the event of a coronavirus outbreak. Lucy said, track and trace and bars having to take down your details in order for you to be there these days. And this is exactly what should never happen. A complete breach of GDPR. Currently getting to the bottom of how and why this has happened. Surely these are meant to be secure databases, no? Well, no, Lucy. I mean, you may well be fit, but you clearly haven't engaged that pretty little brain of yours. There was never any suggestion that personal information would be kept on anything other than a piece of paper or a record book. There were no recommendations made by government on how this information should be obtained and kept secure. In fact, although I haven't been anywhere myself and given any details, I'm assuming that from what I've been told, the simple act of getting you to write your details would have given some indication that the info was not going on a database, secure or otherwise. Now, I'm certain this won't be the last time we hear about this. However, I would suggest that anyone who experiences this kind of random contact by someone who has illegally obtained your details from somewhere you have been, contact the establishment immediately with a letter before claim for breach of privacy. Bearing in mind that the penalty for breaching data protection is at the most serious end of the scale, €20 million, about £18 million or 4% of annual global turnover, whichever is greater. It's important to note, however, that not all breaches will lead to a fine, but it should be enough for the establishment to think very hard about persuading you not to follow up with a complaint. I think by now, most, if not all of you, have heard about the new SS Marshals hitting the streets to tell you if you're breaching COVID regulations based on their perceptions. And don't be fooled to think otherwise, because that's exactly what's going to happen. People given a high vis and some perceived authority with maybe a couple of hours of training will wander the streets, see you maybe holding hands with your partner with whom you share a bubble with, and will then condescendingly tell you that you're breaking regulations, when in fact they know nothing about your personal situation. Which is why this is such a bad idea. Anyway, believe it or not, the very first coronavirus marshals had actually hit the streets back in July. And there was even a short video created by Cornwall Council in association with the EU Regional Development Fund, HM Government and Camborne Council, highlighting just what these marshals would be doing for the local residents and businesses. Now, the keen-eyed viewers may have noticed that not a single coronavirus marshal was wearing a mask. Granted, the mandatory face mask provisions didn't come into full effect until the 24th, which was 3 days after the video was filmed, but still seems a little hypocritical to have marshals to tell us off when they think we're doing something that could be deemed as a breach of regulations or something they perceive to be a risk to others. Recently, there has been an increase of job adverts for marshals after Bojo vowed to strengthen enforcement on people flouting the rules, banning more than 6 people meeting. The government has now said the COVID-secure marshals will have no formal powers and must be paid for by local authorities. Bojo told a press conference on Wednesday the marshals would boost the local enforcement capacity as he announced new rules designed to slow the spread of coronavirus. Although they won't, will they? You can't enforce something you have no powers to enforce. In fact, although the police seem to be praising the addition of marshals, they haven't seen the underlying issue here. How many calls per day do you think the police will now receive from COVID marshals over someone they perceive to be breaching the rules? How often do you think the police are going to be tied up dealing with someone who the marshal perceives to be breaching rules but is in fact not? I can't imagine myself how this will make any difference to the public other than causing more issues for the police, who already keep moaning about lack of manpower. Well, let's see how many more crimes go unsolved now because police are busy being called to a job's worth in a high vis with a power complex. On the 2nd of June this year, we mentioned Civil Nuclear Constabulary Superintendent Glenn McAlevey, who was picked up on the fact that he had been caught wearing military medals at a Cumbria police event to falsely imply that he had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. McAlevey was suspended due to the allegations, which were those of gross misconduct, while those allegations were investigated. It was alleged he wore the medal ribbons on his left chest pocket of his tunic, knowing that he was not entitled to do so, and to give the false impression he had been awarded those medals and served in those campaigns whilst a member of the military. Well, 3 months paid suspension later, Superintendent Glenn McAlevey has faced his misconduct hearing, where the panel found that his actions did in fact amount to gross misconduct. And of course, what do the police do when they find a constable or officer has lied, purposely breached the professional standards of integrity and honesty? Well, they tell them not to do it again and let them keep their job with nothing more than a written warning. Stolen valor is a serious offence in the US, which can see perpetrators landed with anywhere between 5 and 10 years in prison. During 2016, there were campaigns here to have a water mitty type law introduced in the UK. After all, it's illegal to impersonate a police constable, so why not military personnel? In February and March of this year, we spoke about 60-year-old former Police Scotland Inspector Keith Farkasan, who was found guilty of murder after he choked his 56-year-old wife of 33 years, Alice, at home in August 2019. It was alleged that he killed Alice just after she had asked him if he still loved her, for which he was given a life sentence. However, the Scottish Courts and Tribunal Service have confirmed that Keith intends to appeal his conviction. The jury heard during his trial that the ex-traffic inspector who retired from the police in 2010 claimed the death of his wife was an accident, but also admitted having affairs with several women during his 33-year marriage, adding that his wife did not trust him. The court heard Mrs. Farkasan had stood by the 60-year-old despite his serial adultery and being demoted at work for sending a sleazy poem to a female officer. Farkasan claimed at trial his wife had yelled at him, "I hate you, why are you so cold, you show me no affection." He said he moved to stop his wife lashing out, which included putting his hand over her mouth to stop her screaming. At the time, he had a reduced charge of culpable homicide plea rejected by the court. Now, it's not certain at the moment what this appeal will entail, whether it will be to have all the charges appealed against and dropped, or whether the appeal was to get the lesser culpable homicide charge. But when there's more information, I will, of course, let you know. Police in England are fuming at the moment, as their main go-to reason for stop and search has been rumbled, and the IOPC have told them they cannot stop and search suspects just because they smell of cannabis. The IOPC said that the smell of cannabis on a suspect was not enough by itself to justify a stop and search, as they ruled on a case involving a constable stopping cyclist Emmanuel Arthur. And police have genuinely lost their shit over the ruling, who seem to think that by not being able to search someone based on their smell, or alleged smell. After all, we know most of the times they say it's simply because you can't disprove their allegation. Ex-Met Police Chief Inspector Mick Neville blasted the decision, saying at a time when crime is increasing, the police do not need any more barriers to stop them targeting drug users and dealers. Well, ex-Met Detective Chief Inspector Mark Neville, the public also need protecting from unscrupulous constables wanting to teach people a lesson by inconveniencing them without any recourse, because you know as well as the rest of us, although sometimes you get a result, many of the stops actually result in nothing found. Neville added, if an officer smells cannabis on a person, then this should be sufficient reason to conduct a search. We are reaching the stage where drug users could smoke a spliff in front of police knowing full well that an officer can do nothing about it. What a crybaby statement to make. And this won't be the only member or ex-member in this case of the Thin Blue Line gang who's going to be throwing their toys out of their pram over this ruling. After all, as I said, this is their number one stop and search blag for people and vehicles. The IOPC upheld a complaint made by Emmanuel Arthur, the founder of Black Cyclists Network, who said he was harassed and humiliated in a public space during the incident in November last year. The watchdog found the Metropolitan Police officers' grounds for the search under Section 23 of the Misuse of Drugs Act were not reasonable. Arthur posted a video of his stop and search on Twitter where it shows the police constable, after finding nothing on him, admitting that the smell that initiated the search could no longer be smelt. IOPC Regional Director Sal Nassim said stopping someone on the single ground of a suspicion of the smell of cannabis is not good practice, and it's right that the officer will have to reflect on this. Our investigation found the officer had used the same approach on other occasions, but with people of all sexes and ethnicities. However, it's still important to acknowledge that Mr. Arthur felt racially profiled. The importance of police officers recognising and being aware of the disproportionate impact stop and search has on black communities in particular cannot be understated. Which I have to say, and I'll be honest with you as I always am, I think is the sole reason for this change of heart. I didn't want to bring ethnicity into the equation, but as the IOPC did, I might as well say my piece. Whether you agree or not, you can let me know in the comments. I think that had this not been a black man, and had this not been at a time in this country's history where wokeness and virtue signalling is at its highest, I find it very hard to believe that this would have been the outcome. People have been complaining about stop and search with no grounds for years, and nothing's been done about it until now, which I think says a great deal. But that's just my opinion, and as this is my channel and not the BBC, I can say just what the hell I want. My opinions are mine, and not those of some corporate monster. Conservative Boston Borough Councillor David Brown is in hot water this week after filming himself whilst what looks like driving a lorry and partaking in a Zoom meeting at the same time. From the footage taken of a council meeting, it looks as if he was driving for at least 20 minutes before disappearing from sight, then reappearing on the screen, and it seems like he is parked up for the rest of the meeting. A Boston Borough Council spokesperson said, "We will be investigating this through the correct channels, and it will be dealt with accordingly." Lincolnshire Police also confirmed it is investigating a report of a man using a device whilst driving, but could not confirm it was a councillor. The local Democracy Reporting Service has attempted to contact Councillor Brown and the firm he is understood to work for. Opposition Councillor Peter Watson, who has been involved in driver training for 16 years, said operating any additional device while driving creates driver distraction from safely operating the controls. Doing this while driving an HGV can easily cause an accident which can lead to serious consequences and even the death of innocent people. This does include hands-free devices. A driver has the lives of other drivers and passengers on the road in their hands. The penalties for driving whilst using a handheld device are 6 penalty points and a £200 fine if you're using a handheld phone when driving. You'll also lose your licence if you've passed your driving test in the last 2 years. You can get 3 penalty points if you don't have a full view of the road and traffic ahead or proper control of the vehicle. You can also be taken to court, where you can be banned from driving or riding, get a maximum fine of £1,000 or £2,500 if you're driving a lorry or bus. And now, seeing as this is a councillor, an elected official, then I think the only appropriate sanction would be to throw the book at him. But it's hardly likely. seeing as councils and police work hand in hand. So it will be interesting to see what actually happens here. PC Laura Thorpe answered allegations that her conduct breached the standards of professional behaviour in relation to honesty and integrity, discreditable conduct and challenging and reporting improper conduct in a misconduct hearing 2 weeks ago, but the outcome has only just been released. It was alleged that during an interview with the Metropolitan Police's Department of Professional Standards, PC Thorogood, who was then based in the South East Area Basic Command Unit, said that another officer had been dishonest in relation to an application for a search warrant. This was later found to be untrue. On Thursday, the 27th of August, the panel found the allegations in relation to honesty and integrity and discreditable conduct proven, and that this amounted to gross misconduct. She was consequently handed her P45. The allegation of challenging and reporting improper conduct was found not proven. 28-year-old Daniel Jackson, a former Suffolk police constable, has pleaded guilty at Norwich Crown Court to misconduct in public office and perverting the course of justice. 2 supposedly very serious offences, depending on the judge. The misconduct relates to an incident in Newmarket on October the 20th last year, whilst acting as a serving constable, where he failed to properly investigate suspects in respect of offences relating to controlled substances and a large amount of cash. The perverting the course of justice charges in relation to preparing fake drug wraps with granulated sugar to evidence as wraps seized at the scene of a roadside drug search on March the 4th this year. Caroline Bracken, defending for Jackson, said that he was of previous good character. Of course he was. They always are, aren't they? While acknowledging that although custody was usually imposed, she said the question is whether this is one of the rare cases where a custodial sentence can be suspended. Rare cases where a cop gets suspended sentence. Where is this brief from if she thinks it's rare? She asked for pre-sentencing reports in the case to see if any sentence could be suspended. Judge Andrew Shaw adjourned the sentencing for reports until October the 2nd, but warns Jackson that in cases like this, custody was usually inevitable. He told him the case clearly crosses the custody threshold. Well, we'll have to wait and see about that one, won't we? Jackson was bailed and told to return to the Crown Court for sentencing. Judge Shaw told Jackson that although he was ordering pre-sentence report, he was not making any promises. After the case, Suffolk constabularies confirmed that Jackson was a serving police officer at the time of the offences, but had resigned from the force in July this year. If anyone watching this video still thinks that traffic wardens are not as bad as people make out, then this will probably change your mind. Imagine being worked on by paramedics next to your vehicle for a suspected heart attack, only to find that while you were with the paramedics, some jobs within a high-vis slapped a parking ticket on your motor. I mean, it's pretty inconceivable that something like that would even happen, isn't it? Not anymore. After this exact thing happened to 49-year-old Graham Lewis. Graham called 999 after he felt unwell whilst driving. The ambulance service told him to pull over while they made their way. Once they arrived, they took Graham from his vehicle for an ECG, and whilst in the ambulance, right next to his car, one of the paramedics told him that a parking fine had just been put on his windscreen. Graham, who thankfully had not had a heart attack, argued the parking warden should have checked the ambulance or used common sense before issuing the fine. He said the ambulance was parked across the corner of the vehicle. There's no way they couldn't see the ambulance. I nearly passed out because I was that stressed in the ambulance. Then my blood pressure went through the roof, pure and simply because I'd seen a ticket on my car. I'm just not impressed by the ticket people just going around slapping tickets on vehicles. It's ridiculous. A spokesperson for Herefordshire Council said our parking enforcement officers saw no indication that the driver of this vehicle was inside the nearby ambulance, which had no lights on and its doors closed. It would not be appropriate for an officer, why are they calling them officers? It would not be appropriate for an officer to knock an ambulance door and potentially interrupt medical professionals. Cases such as these are the reason there is an appeals process in place, and we encourage anybody who has received a penalty charge notice as a result of a medical emergency to contact us through the appeals process. Or, rather than just hiring morons who have no common sense, maybe start employing people with a little grey matter.
And a traffic warden. What? Jesus, have we got a traffic warden?
Knock him out and dump him at the lights.
Don't touch him up, knock him out!
I fucking hate traffic wardens.
A post-mortem examination of a man who died in hospital after being found unresponsive in Derbyshire police custody has taken place, but it's been said that more tests need to be carried out to establish the cause of death. 46-year-old Mark Pryor from Derby had been arrested for an undisclosed offence on the 4th of September. He was taken to St Mary's Wharf police station where sometime later he was found in his cell unresponsive. He was taken to hospital where he died a short time later. The IOPC said officers had been interviewed and CCTV footage from the custody unit at St Mary's Wharf police station was being gathered, adding that a post-mortem examination had taken place on Monday, but further tests were needed to establish a cause of death. Derbyshire police said a man was found unresponsive in a cell at St Mary's Wharf police station, Derby, at around 13:30 on Saturday the 5th of September. Upon finding him unresponsive, officers and staff conducted CPR and contacted the ambulance service. He was taken to the Royal Derby Hospital, where he sadly died. Derbyshire Constabulary referred itself to the Independent Office for Police Conduct, which is common practice. Our thoughts and sympathies are with his family and friends at this time. Big thank you to channel supporters, one and all, especially the channel patron supporters. Your support is truly appreciated. And that's all I have for you today. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other. From the police, other officials, and from Sergeant Big Ted, PC Little Ted and myself, have a great weekend.
Good night, all.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.